Star Wars by far has to be the biggest franchise on the planet. The most recognized character names that you could ever come across. At the mere mention of a Leia, or an Anakin, or an Obi-Wan, you can have a flood of people coming over with either pure love, or pure hatred, or just not really caring. Between all the excellently made audiobooks that I've basically gone through every single one of them at this point, to all the great movies, besides, you know, the new ones that are a little bit lackluster. There's a side of this franchise that I have not tapped into yet, and that would have to be the comic book section. Now I know you can go through and see everything that has ever happened to Darth Vader after he left the body of Anakin Skywalker, we might say. And I hear that one is in particularly one of the best ones among the internet. But today I bring you something a little different. Somebody recently just gave me this Star Wars action figure from 1996, and while I've been kind of researching it, making sure that it's not worth thousands of dollars or something, which by the book itself it says 200, but when it's encapsulated in one of these toys, it seems to only run for 30, so very confusing. But anyway, I thought it'd be an absolute blast to maybe kind of open this thing on camera, and then inevitably just kind of read the book like we always do, and just see how it is. But let's go ahead and tear this bad boy open. There we go. Almost to it. Shadows of the Empire. It's a pretty thin little book, but it looks very 90s, alright? I love the greens, all the yellows, and you can actually see Boba Fett out in the background. Now, I have no idea what this thing's going to be about. I don't know a ton about the Shadows of the Empire kind of era of things, but I'm actually pretty interested to read this thing. Now, let's go ahead and check out some of these little action figures. We have a IG-88 complete with 2 guns that you can take off his own body, and a Boba Fett himself. And here the two are. We have a nice little robot and the Boba Fett complete with a jetpack. And they're actually pretty cool. I'm not really one that's super into collecting action figures or anything of that sort, unless it's like Spawn or something just for nostalgia's sake. But these ones actually seem fairly decent. There's been a lot of times where I've come across these Star Wars action figures and things like that that are just pretty lackluster and aren't very detailed. Try to get this to focus, but these two seem relatively cool. But now that we've opened that, we've checked out these little toys, I am going to go ahead and read this thing and see what turns out. I'm hoping it's going to be good. I'm hoping it's not just going to be a very simple thrown out there kind of thing just to make the deadlines of actually making these toys. But from what I'm seeing on the inside, the artwork does look pretty good. So I will see you guys when I'm done reading this thing. Okay, I'm back. It is a different day, and I've read the story in question, and I gotta say, it was just a little bit disappointing, as this is basically just literally a fraction of a story. I'm not really sure why they'd include this tiny little snippet in a toy collection when it is literally just like a few minutes of a story. I'm not sure if I'm going to have to go and actually hunt down the rest of this story by collecting all the different toys or ripping them from Boba Fett's cold, dead body. That will surely happen later on in the future. Some things that were kind of interesting is the artwork is actually surprisingly kind of cool, and different things that are going on when certain alarm systems are triggered, as well as the meeting of IG-88, who is a super assassin that if you've ever played Knights of the Old Republic 2, he is in that. I'm not sure if these two characters are the exact same, but if it is, this is really a droid that needs to be watched, as he has thoughts of human genocide and many other things. I don't know if many of you have played through those different games. They are absolutely fantastic if you are a Star Wars fan whatsoever. But with all that, it includes pretty much the entire cast of Star Wars, at least the hero section of this. It has Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Chewie, Lando Calrissian, Han Solo, C-3PO, the only person that I didn't really see, R2-D2 himself, and while that was a little bit disappointing, as well as the main story plot here, the only thing that I thought was fairly interesting was that this takes place right before Han Solo's frozen and carbonite body was actually taken to Jabba the Hutt's palace for a handsome bounty. This kind of features his said body being transported by Boba Fett, while a slew of different bounty hunters are actually trying to get in on the credits of this whole thing, while the rest of the gang is trying to stop this from happening. Now, we all know what's going to happen. We all know the body will eventually be delivered to Jabba the Hutt himself, And we know that eventually Han Solo will be freed from his captivity, which I personally have no idea how a man trapped in frozen carbonite would even survive such a thing, as I believe he was trapped in there for at least a couple months, if not a couple years. And the human body, I don't know, it can actually withstand such harsh conditions, but I'm no scientist myself, so if any of you have an answer for that, that would be great. But where this all begins is Boba Fett kind of hovering over the lands of Tatooine, as he's about to dip in and finally claim his prize. We're now leaving hyperspace, entering the Tatooine system. I trust you've enjoyed your trip, Solo. Next stop, Jabba the Hutt. He's going to pay well for you, Solo. You're not just a prisoner, you're more than that. You're a work of art. Not alive, not dead, frozen in a moment of time. Man in carbonite, a masterpiece by Darth Vader himself. Oh yes, Jabba will pay dear to put you in his collection. And as Boba Fett is looking over his bounty in front of him, all of his alarm systems start ringing off. Boba immediately goes to his seat and tries to figure out the fastest way to re-enter hyperspace. And as he's looking through all of his different systems, through all this cool green light that we can see in these different panels, he starts to see the outline of a ship. A ship he knows very well. This is the IG-2000, the ship of an assassin droid only known as IG-88, who has been following Boba Fett and his bounties for a long time. No mistaking the outline. IG-2000, property of assassin droid IG-88, a bounty hunter who fancies himself my equal. And Boba Fett is able to instantly vaporize the ship. We see a large explosion going off, and while this doesn't make sense, this seems to be much too easy of an answer, and Boba Fett knows this. He puts up his guard, and almost instantly a ship falls out of hyperspace right behind him. We start seeing all these green lasers kind of going off from the background, just shooting him down, and as these lasers hit and the shrapnel is falling off of his own ship, he begins to admire this little piece of tactics. And as well, IG-88 starts coming over his own intercom. Boba Fett, surrender your prisoner, and you have a 30% probability of surviving this encounter. I am far more capable of withstanding the gravitronic pressures than you. This tactic has a 0 probability curve for success. And while Boba Fett thought the first encounter was a little too easy, almost instantly blowing up this decoy ship, he is basically able to do this again. He turns all of his dampeners until 90% of his velocity has been lost. Honestly, he is far behind IG-88, and he sends out a couple turbo cannons, or whatever they're called in the Star Wars universe. We see an enormous explosion go off, and we see that Boba Fett is now the victor. He says, "The better man wins, droid." And as he's basking in his victory, he calls to a ship to tell him the damage report. 60% loss of function, rear deflectors, implosion of internal dampeners, caused attendant meltdown in hyperdrive core, hyperdrive non-functional, sublight engines operational at 30%. Then IG-88's done a serious damage nonetheless. I must put in for repairs. But where? Not Tatooine. There could be others waiting for us. There's a safe dock on the Imperial Enclave on Gaul. It appears we'll be keeping each other company for a while longer, Solo. Though, let's not hope for too much longer. And as fast as this section of the book comes, it is ready to leave. And with the next couple pages, we'll be greeted by the next gaggle of heroes that we've all come to know and love. Chewbacca, Lando Calrissian, Luke Skywalker, C-3PO, Princess Leia. As suddenly they already know what happened to Boba Fett and his cargo. Somehow they actually know that IG-88 came out of nowhere and actually put a serious stop to his mission. I guess Lando has some kind of inside information that would allow him to know these kind of things. But I thought it was just a little too easy that they would already know that he's actually headed to the Imperial Enclave on Gaul. But this is essentially where they're all at. Luke Skywalker is flying, as well as Rogue Squadron, as well as the Millennium Falcon. Gaul, dead ahead. We'll be in range of the Imperial cruiser in just 3 minutes, Wedge. You heard Commander Skywalker, Rogues. Attack formation. We're gonna stir up a buzzer's nest. I hope Lando's right about this, Skip. They're taking a big chance. What if Boba Fett's not on Gaul? I assure you my information came from a very reliable source. Fett was on his way to deliver Han to Jabba when another bounty hunter attempted a little smash and grab. Fett's ship Slave 1 was badly damaged. The safest place to make repairs was the Imperial Enclave on Gaul, it being heavily fortified. And with this easily attained knowledge, C-3PO can be seen in the background just kind of making a big stir out of things. This robot seems like he's never down for much. He always seems to be putting in the back pedal of every situation, just kind of putting a dampener on the spirits and letting everybody know that this is kind of a death trap when everybody knows that they're main characters, for Christ's sake, right? I mean, they've been written to essentially be immortal. I mean, that's basically how it's worked throughout all these different Star Wars movies, besides maybe Han Solo, who finally achieved his own death in the last couple movies, which, congratulations, You have finally made your way out of the series and no longer will be bothered. But as C-3PO is saying this, Princess Leia is just making the point that it's too much of an asset to the rebels. And as she does so, Chewie just kind of lets off one of his famous noises. I would try to do it, but currently I cannot. I have a bit of a sinus infection and I don't think I could have done it in the first place. So just enjoy this. Of course the princess loves Han. We all love him. Sure, in our own different kind of ways. And with this little bit of banter, the team splits off. Rogue Squadron goes away. They're going to kind of try and move in on a flanking position, while Lando and everybody else is going to go head on course. And we are actually greeted to a character that I haven't really met in any of the audiobooks or anything like that. An intergalactic smuggler by the name of Dash. Stay tight on my tail, Lando. Here's your chance to prove you're not the second best pilot around. You still talk like a hotshot, buddy. I can't say I'm happy about putting our fate in the hands of a mercenary like Dash Rendar. He's no friend of the Empire anyway. We used to do a little bit of smuggling in the old days. Guess Dash never got out of that line of work. That's how he knows to set up on go. Sometimes I think he's a little too confident for his own good. He'll need all the confidence he can muster for this one. Don't worry, Princess. If anybody can get us to Boba Fett, he can. And cutting away from this, we are headed to the city of Gaul, where we will once again see Boba Fett just kind of getting his ship repaired, as well as talking to all these different bounty hunters who are just basically begging to be let in on this reward. And if we know anything about Boba Fett, no way is he going to go for such a thing. Glad you can make it, Fett. Take a seat. Get to the point, Zuckus. I have better things to do with my time. The point is cooperation. You have Solo. We want him. What Bosk means is that it's a big reward. There's plenty for everybody. We're all in the same business. Think about how much easier it would be if we worked together, shared the responsibility. I see you want to cut yourselves in on the bounty. And as we're getting this shot of a person up on the catwalk just kind of pointing a gun down at Boba Fett, this man knows. He has the third eye, and with the last page, we are just greeted to a scene of him pulling out of his blaster and shooting this lone gunman down. Think again. And this is sadly the end of the story. Like I said, it's basically just seriously a fraction of it. I found this to be a little bit disappointing. I knew that it would be a very short story, but I didn't think it would be the middle of something. And I also don't really understand. It's on the back of this box. It says that there are two different pairs of these collectible action figures. One containing Boba Fett and IG-88, and another with Darth Vader and Prince Caesar. Now, these are the only two sets, and each one comes with a collectible comic book, so I don't know if it is that much of a short story where they could wrap it up in 2 issues, basically a total of 20 to 25 pages or so altogether. But either way, I don't really see how this could possibly pan out. So yes, everybody, I hope this was relatively interesting. I hope at least the shot of the toy was cool enough. I'm afraid this is going to be a boring episode. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope it was at least semi-entertaining. I think what we're going to do next is we're going to be getting back into Saint Sinner, as I found that to be a very interesting story, and I really want to see where that goes next. And yes, I've just had this toy just kind of sitting on my shelf for the longest time, and I thought, finally, I will open this thing. But behold, the action figures were kind of cool, but not nearly as cool as something you would get from a Spawn action figure. And if I ever come across something like that with a Spawn comic inside, I think that would also be great. Which I do have like the first 20 issues of Spawn, and that is also something that I'd like to go through. I'd have to read it all and kind of find a good place to start at, which obviously will be the beginning, but exactly what parts need to be mentioned, and all sorts of different things like that. I actually have some weird, like, rare collected versions of it that I ended up finding on the internet this summer. Yes, this is not this. And as big as a Star Wars history buff that I'd like to think I am, this was just not it. Alright? Or get the fuck out of here. But anyways, everybody, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, like I said, and I will see you on the next episode of From the Heart. Have yourselves a fantastic day, and stay away from those goddamn protocol droids. That's the only move I know.